In this video, we'll demonstrate the spreadsheet input control on a UX component. So the spreadsheet input control is a control that is designed to allow you to enter data quickly using a spreadsheet style user interface. So you can see that I can type values into any of the cells. I can use the tab key to move from cell to cell. I can move the up and down arrows to move between cells, etc. And then when I submit the data, when I hit the submit button, basically all of the data in the control gets submitted as a single JSON value. So when I go ahead there and hit the submit button, you can see I've got the debugger there showing the data that was submitted, the JSON data from the cell. So we can also populate the data in the control by hitting this populate button there, and we can set the value in the control just like we can set the value in any data control on a UX using the set value method. So let's go now and take a look at how this control is set up. So you can see if we go in here to the UX component, we can see there's a control there called a spreadsheet input control. So to go and add a new spreadsheet input control to a UX, we go here to the data control section over there, scroll down to more controls, and then in the list of available controls we see that there's a control type there called spreadsheet input. So here's our spreadsheet input control now, and we can now go and configure the control. So this is where we set all of the properties for the control, and the most important property to set is the column definition. So this defines what columns the spreadsheet control will display. So right now I've got 3 columns. I can go there and add another column. So we'll go here and type in, say, field 4, and then we can configure basically properties for field 4. So we can set things like the class name, the width, the alignment, the default value, etc. And we can also basically specify JavaScript to format the value in the cell, to validate the data in the cell, and finally to compute the value in the cell. So we'll just go ahead there and click OK, go there. And now when we run the component again, we now see 4 cells in our spreadsheet. We can also basically go and quickly populate the cells by selecting this genie over here. So let's go and delete the existing cells and say use the genie, and we'll now go and use, say, the Northwind connection string, and we'll point to the customer table. So we'll go there and choose customers, and then we'll say we want to select which fields we'd like. So we'll go here and choose some of the fields from the customer table. So now you can see that we've quickly defined the fields for the spreadsheet control, and when we go ahead now and we run it, we'll see that we've got some additional controls there. You can also see that we've got a row label for each row there, and this was defined by turning on the row prefix. So each row can have a prefix and a suffix. In this case, the prefix was turned on, and the prefix is a JavaScript expression that just returns the row number. So the JavaScript code gets passed in the data for the control and the current row number. This is a 0-based row number, so therefore we just return row plus 1. And you can see that we've also configured the row prefix to be right aligned and to have a font size that is 75% of the default font, and we've also set the column width to 50 pixels. So in the next video we'll show some additional functionality of the control, but as you can see here, it's very easy to set up a spreadsheet control to do rapid data entry into a UX component. So we're continuing to look at the spreadsheet input control on a UX component. So you can see that when I run this component right now, the spreadsheet control has 5 empty rows, and if I type some values into the say the last row and then tab out, you can see I get some additional rows are displayed. So if we go back and look at the definition here, we can see that this control was configured to display 5 empty rows. So and we basically specified that there's no limit to the number of rows that the control should display. So when we tab out of the last row, new rows are going to be added. So you can see here when we go back now, so there are our 5 rows, and when we tab out of this row here, we get basically a new row because we always want 5 new rows to be displayed. So you can see now there are 5 new rows being displayed over there. If we had set the allow additional empty rows to be added to false, then when I tabbed out of the last row, there would be no new additional rows being shown. Also, you can see here that when we click the populate button, the control gets populated, and then there are the 5 new rows displayed after the last filled in row. So if we go and look at the populate button over here, we can see that the code that is being executed is just a standard set value method, and the value that we are setting the control to is a JSON string that is an array of objects. So basically you can see that in the first row of the array we're setting field 1 to alpha, field 2 to beta, and then field 3 to a blank string. In the second row we're just simply setting field 2 to gamma, and we're leaving field 1 and field 3 empty. And then in the third row we're setting field 3 to delta. So basically you can use the set value and get value methods to set the value in the spreadsheet input control and to read the value out of the control. And of course when you hit the submit button, all of the data in the spreadsheet control gets submitted as a single JSON value. So next we're going to look at how you can make AJAX callbacks to populate the data in the spreadsheet control. So let's switch over now to another component over here. So we'll go over to this component, and let's go ahead now and run this. And you can see now I'm going to go here from this drop down and select, say, one of the countries from the Northwind sample database here, and I'll choose USA. And you can see what happened right now is we made an AJAX callback to the server, fetched the data, and then we populated the control with the data for the USA. If I go now and say switch to, say, Brazil, you can see there's the data for Brazil, and then let's go to, say, the UK, and then there's the value for the UK. So let's go now and take a look at behind the scenes what happens here. So we have a drop-down control, and in the drop-down control basically on the onChange event we're going to make an AJAX callback to an XBasic function called XB. And if we go look at our function XB over here, we can see that we're going to basically do a SQL select against the customer table for the current value in the drop-down control. So then we're going to get the JSON data, and then once we've got the JSON data, we're going to compute a JavaScript response to send back to the UX component, and our JavaScript response is going to call the set value method on the spreadsheet input control and set the value to underbar data, which is the JSON data that was retrieved from the query. So in the next video we'll show how you can also dynamically set the columns in the control. So continuing now, looking at the spreadsheet input control, you can see now that we have our input control displaying 3 columns over here, and what we'd like to do now is dynamically change the columns that are shown in this spreadsheet input control and also populate the control with some data. So I'm going to go here and click this button, and you can see now when I click the button, the columns displayed in the spreadsheet input control are dynamically changed, and we go here and we set the data. So if I go now and hit the submit button and we look at the data that was submitted, we can see that we get first name, last name, and city, as opposed to the previous field 1, field 2, and field 3. So let's go take a look now at how this was done. So if we go now to the button, we can see that we're getting a pointer to the spreadsheet input control. So the control is called SS1, so we're getting a pointer to the control. Here is the data that we'd like to use to populate the control and also to set the control's columns, and then we call the set columns and populate method of this object, and we pass in the data that we'd like to use to populate the control with. So what we've shown in this video is how you can quickly create a data entry control here in a UX component from the data control section that displays a spreadsheet style grid that is ideal for doing rapid data entry using a spreadsheet style metaphor where the tab key navigates from cell to cell, and also where the up and down arrows navigate from row to row. We've also shown how you can read the value from the control, how you can set the values in the control, and how you can dynamically also set the columns that are displayed in the control. Thanks very much for watching.